You're watching Around the World, our top global stories. We begin with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelenskyy, who has vowed to continue to defend and strengthen the city of Bakhmut. Russian forces encroaching on the devastated eastern Ukrainian city have sought to capture it for the last 6 months. And less than a week ago, an advisor to Zelenskyy said that the defenders might retreat from Bakhmut. Zelenskyy's declaration came after a meeting he chaired in which Ukraine's top military brass told him not to retreat and to strengthen.
The occupier kills for the mere fact that we are Ukrainians, for just one word about Ukraine, for our dream of Ukraine, for our life, the life of Ukrainians. And we destroy the occupier everywhere, wherever it gives a result for Ukraine. Bakhmut gave and gives one of the greatest results during this war, during the entire battle for the Donbass.
Russian forces have been unable to deliver a knockout blow that would allow them to seize Bakhmut. Bakhmut serves as the administrative center of the Bakhmut Rayon region in Donetsk in Ukraine. And the US has said that even if the eastern city should fall to Russia's offensive, it would not necessarily give Moscow momentum in the war. Many analysts say it does not hold major strategic value and that its capture would be unlikely to serve as a turning point in the conflict. Russia, meanwhile, is surrounding Bakhmut to secure what would be its first major gain in more than half a year. The intense battle has depleted both sides' artillery reserves with thousands of shells fired every day along the eastern and southern fronts. Ukraine's European allies, meanwhile, are working on a deal to procure more ammunition for the fight for Bakhmut. The Russians are not having it easy. Its own military and the Wagner private mercenary group leading the Bakhmut assault are at loggerheads. Wagner Group's boss Yevgeny Prigozhin demanded more ammunition and said that his aid had been barred from military's operational headquarters. Russia says that capturing the city of Bakhmut would be a step towards its major objective of seizing the full territory of the surrounding Donbass region of Ukraine. Apart from Bakhmut, Russia's offensive has produced no notable gains so far. Russia has failed to seize ground in the Luhansk province further north and is taking heavy losses, in particular around the Vuhledar town to the south. Meanwhile, Ukraine says that Russia's losses in trying to seize Bakhmut could affect the future course of the war because it destroys the invaders' combat power. Moving on to Turkey, where Kalem Kilicdaroglu, a soft-spoken leftist from Turkey's long marginalized Alevi community, nicknamed the Gadnhi of Turkey, has been chosen by the collective opposition to fight Turkey's current president Recep Tayyip Erdogan in the presidential elections of the country that is being scheduled for the upcoming month of May.
After our meetings, it is my responsibility to announce our decision. Kalem Kilicdaroglu is our presidential candidate.
Turkey's fractured opposition parties ended months of fractious debates and agreed to nominate secular opposition leader Kalem Kilicdaroglu as their joint candidate for Turkey's presidential elections that are slated to take place on the 14th of May this year. Now, it does look like a last-ditch attempt deal aimed at averting a split of the opposition vote, and it could see Kilicdaroglu name the other 5 opposition leaders as vice presidents if he succeeds in defeating the current president Erdogan's 2-decade-long rule.
The door of the National Alliance is open to everyone who shares our common Turkish dream. I salute our 85 million people, regardless of belief, thought, ideology, or identity.
Earlier, Erdogan's task had appeared to become a little easier when one of the main leaders of the 6-party opposition alliance walked out of the talks. It was argued that Kilicdaroglu, the leader of the pro-secular center-left Republican People's Party, known by the acronym CHP in Turkey, lacked the public appeal to defeat Erdogan in the elections. The opposition was urged to let the popular CHP mayors of their either Istanbul or Ankara step into the race. Meanwhile, Erdogan faces the fight of his political life so far in what many view as Turkey's most consequential election since its birth as a post-Ottoman republic 100 years ago. Even as Erdogan seeks to extend his Islamic style of rule until the year 2028, he needs to overcome the twin hurdles of an economic crisis and the aftermath of the devastating earthquakes that hit the region. Opinion polls point to a tight race that remains far too close to call. The Turkish president announced that a date for the national elections would be formalized later this week, and the vote could shift the country toward a more democratic course or extend Erdogan's increasingly authoritarian rule into a third decade. Now, are you keeping a track of your and your loved ones' weight? Well, you must, because the World Obesity Federation has warned that more than half the world's population will be classed as obese or overweight by the year 2035 if action is not taken now. The report has used Body Mass Index or BMI to make its assessments. BMI is calculated by dividing an adult's weight by the square of their height. Obesity is a medical condition used to describe a person with a high excess of body fat. Reasons include trends in dietary preferences towards highly processed foods, greater levels of sedentary behavior, weaker policies to control food supply and marketing, and lack of well-resourced healthcare services to assist in weight management and health education. According to the Federation's report, more than 4 billion people will be affected, with rates rising the fastest among children. And there's a cost of getting obese as well. The report predicts the cost of obesity will amount to more than $4 trillion annually by the year 2035. The president of the World Obesity Federation, Professor Louise Bohr, described the report's findings as a clear warning to countries to act now or risk repercussions in the future. The report highlights the rising rates of obesity among children and teenagers, and the rates are expected to double from the 2020 levels among both boys and girls. The Federation has urged governments and policymakers across the world to do all they can to avoid passing health, social, and economic costs on to the younger generation. More so, lower middle-income countries in Africa and Asia are expected to see the greatest rises. 9 of the 10 countries with the greatest expected increases in obesity globally are lower middle-income states in Africa and Asia. Lower-income countries are often the least able to respond to obesity and its consequences. The findings estimate that rises in obesity rates around the world will have a significant impact on the global economy, amounting to about 3% of global GDP. Meanwhile, the report emphasizes that its acknowledgement of the economic impact of obesity is in no way a reflection of blame on people living with obesity. Shifting focus to Japan's ambitious next generation rocket program, which has bitten the dust quite literally. Japan's space agency intentionally destroyed a new H-3 rocket moments into its launch after the ignition for the second stage of the country's first new rocket series in more than 2 decades failed. The H-3 rocket with a white head blasted off and soared into the blue sky from the Tanegashima Space Center in southern Japan as fans and local residents cheered. It followed its planned trajectory, and the second stage separated as planned as well. But the ignition for it failed, and within 15 minutes from leaving the launch pad, the destruct command was transmitted to the H-3 rocket. The rocket was carrying an advanced land observation satellite tasked primarily with Earth observation and data collection for disaster response and map making. It also carried an experimental infrared sensor developed by the Japan Defense Ministry that can monitor military activity including missile launches, especially North Korean ballistic missile launches. Japan's space agency JAXA said it sent a command to destroy the rocket as there was no hope for it to complete its mission. Coming 3 weeks after an aborted launch due to a glitch, the H-3's failure is a big setback for Japan's space program and possibly for its missile detection program as well. And also a big disappointment for space fans across the world. The H-3 rocket's launch had also been delayed for more than 2 years due to problems with engine development. And with that, it's a wrap here on this edition of Around the World. Thank you so much for watching. Keep it with News 9 Plus.